Tomorrow, I love ya. Tomorrow, the draft is a day away. That was awful, but that was my singing. I told Jordan I would sing today, so
I loved it.
I think, Brett, should we pick a random off-season episode to do the List the Musical and just have you sing the entire episode?
That might not do well. I don't have the pipes for that anymore. You get a short little bit about that, but that's about it.
Kevin, you do notice that Brett said anymore, did you?
Yeah, so that implies that there has been a time where he was at the level of a musical. So
I was very good. I used to be in like select choir and all that stuff, and then I got like tonsillitis about 5 or 6 times just in high school alone. So it's a little bit rough. But yeah, I used to be a pretty good singer.
I guess you could say that your vocal ability has dropped, similar to Shedeur Sanders' live draft position.
Krusty has it right. That was utterly horrible. But, I do it for the content.
Jordan, the funniest thing about Shedeur Sanders' draft position is, like, he started off, it's like, yeah, he's probably quarterback 1. Then it was never like, I don't know, man, he's probably going to go around, like, pick 10. It was like, no, I think he's going to go pick 21. Just, like, never an in-between of, like, I'm sure a team will trade up for him. No, we're just like, yeah, I think he's going to be pick 21.
Well, it becomes to the point, it all determines if the Derek Carr stuff is true, and if the Saints, who I've been saying needed to draft a quarterback since Lamar Jackson's draft, they're probably not going to make it. They're probably not going to do it.
Yeah, and the reason I pulled up that draft board here, and now I'll put it to the right of us, is, Kevin, you talk about how it just goes from 10 to 21, but, like, unless there's a trade up, when you start getting in here, if he doesn't get picked, let's say Raiders, Jets, Saints don't take him here, then you really start dropping. I saw somebody today mention, would the Colts take him? I've seen people talk about, would Seattle take him? But then the reason I think it's 21.5 is the question is, A, does Pittsburgh take him? And B, does somebody trade up right in here and take him first so Pittsburgh can't? I would say that Denver pick, especially, Brett, with what you were saying, with how connected Denver's been to this running back class, and I think 20 might be a little too high for it. If you're not talking about Ashton Genty, I think Denver's a prime spot for a team that's in the early second round to possibly trade up and nab him in front of Pittsburgh. But it's looking like he's not going to get picked where he originally thought he was going to get picked.
The only wild card here for me is New Orleans, because Derek Carr is likely not going to play football this year. And to some degree, they will likely need a quarterback at some point. And so, like, I don't know, like, where they stand on Shedeur Sanders in a sense, but if they like Shedeur Sanders, would they take him at 9? And if they take him at 9, then I think that leaves a possibility where, like, Tet McMillan starts to fall a little bit, or Tyler Warren starts to fall a little bit, or we get into a situation where one of these offensive tackles fall, because it feels like their pick is going to be offensive tackle or pass catcher. And if they don't take either of those at 9 and go Shedeur Sanders, you're looking at a situation where, like, once you get to pick 13, for example, with the Dolphins, suddenly Tyler Warren's on the board. Suddenly Armin Membu's on the board or whatever, right? And, like, everything changes. I think to some degree of, like, I don't know if their board is the same if Tyler Warren's on the board or if Armin Membu's on the board, right? Like, maybe their board changes at that point.
Yeah, and Brett and I were talking about it before, because Brett is in the camp of not wanting the Dolphins to take Tyler Warren. And what I said to Brett is that it almost feels like, a little like we said about JPJ last year at this point, it would almost be best case scenario for the Dolphins fans if Tyler Warren is off the board before the 13th pick. So that Brett, for example,
to be clear,
I am not reaction to passing him.
I am not against taking Tyler Warren. My whole point has been people are making Tyler Warren into something that he is not.
And what is that?
People are acting like he's a Brock Bowers level prospect, and he is a good prospect. I would not call him a great prospect or elite prospect. If we're drafting 10 spots lower, he is an amazing pick. I just don't see game changer at least right away. And I think people, which if you want to take him at 13, that's fine. I think you're looking at 30, 40 catches, maybe 300 to 500 yards as a rookie, which I don't think is bad. And I think you'd see a huge improvement. But I think people are acting like he is going to be what Brock Bowers was this past year.
So what's your biggest holdup on Tyler Warren then? Because I think this is worth a conversation because he may be the Dolphins pick, right? Like I'm not going to eliminate him being pick at 13.
I will not eliminate him. I'm not eliminating him. I'm just saying I think we got to temper expectations for him because he's not going to come in. I don't think he's going to change the offense right away. I think he fits in. He becomes the 5th or 6th option, at least this year, which is fine. I think a lot of his numbers are skewed just because of the Kotelnicki offense. So I think he just becomes more he just becomes a secondary option, and then you're drafting for a year or two down the road, which I have no problem with. Because again, I loved the Chop Robinson pick last year. And what was the complaint with Chop Robinson? He's not a pick to help us now. We need help now. Ty Warren, to me, is not a help now pick for the Dolphins specifically. For other teams, he absolutely is. For us, he's a backup, like plain and simple.
So I think my argument to that would be you look at what Mike McDaniel has done when they go into 12 personnel, the 2 tight ends, 1 running back personnel for anyone not familiar. But like when they go into 12 personnel, I think their offense is far more effective. Yeah. And if that's the case, I think Tyler Warren's the perfect tight end for this offense because
I agree.
I think the biggest issue I have with him is I think his run blocking technique is not where it has to be. And to some degree, that's going to hinder him early on. But I think the biggest thing is he's aggressive. He wants to block. And I'll say this about a lot of guys that I watch or like talk about is that it's one thing to be a bad blocker. It's another thing to be a bad blocker who doesn't want to block. I think that like you look at like Mike Gesicki, and not to throw stones at the glass house per se, but like he was not a willing blocker. He was just not very good at the whole blocking thing. And like I think that's why he found a role as more of a slot receiver. But I think a guy like Tyler Warren, first of all, I think his receiving upside carries over. I don't really agree that he'd be the 5th option. I think he really steps in as the 3rd or 4th option. I think his biggest thing though is that he's aggressive. And I think this offense, frankly, needs a guy who's aggressive because you look at Tyreek Hill, you look at Jalen Waddle, you look at even like Malik Washington, HN, none of those guys I categorize as physical, aggressive players. I categorize them as speed finesse guys. And like, I think to some degree, we talked about this, I think before, is like this offense needs a guy who's going to kick your ass. And truthfully, like, do they have that right now? Maybe it's Jonnu Smith. Maybe it's like Pharaoh Brown. Maybe it's Jalen Wright. But like, I don't know if they have a guy who's going to consistently kick your ass.
And you look at their offense and talk about how they don't have someone that can do that. But you look at the defense right now, and they don't really have many of those or enough necessary to have a Super Bowl caliber unit. A name that Brett and I were talking about last night for about 30 seconds was Mason Graham before we said, yeah, we're wasting our time talking about him because there's no way that he's going to be there. And then today, Peter Schrager puts out his mock draft, which I'm going to share here in a second once I get better at technology. And it goes up on the screen right now. You look at Peter Schrager, who mocks Mason Graham to the Dolphins at 13. I think if I remember correctly, and I'm going to scroll up a little bit, that he had Tyler Booker 12.
He has Walter Nolan going.
He has Walter Nolan at 10. And he has Tyler Warren going 7 to the Jets here. But the biggest thing is I didn't love seeing Walter Nolan ahead of Mason Graham. And number 2, I find it very unlikely that Mason Graham is there at 13. What do you guys think?
You want to take this first, Kev?
Yeah, so my biggest thing is, let's say Jacksonville takes Ashton Genty.
Oh, I'm calling 6.
Go up again. Go up again. I need to see the teams. I'm a visual learner. Okay, so hypothetically, Jacksonville takes Ashton Genty.
And do you buy that, Kev?
I've
been seeing that a lot the last couple of days, and it makes a little bit more sense the more you look at it. But God, I just think that they'd be passing on such other talented players to take a running back in that fifth slot.
I think it's going to be between Mason Graham and Ashton Genty. I think the reason why they'll take Ashton Genty is because that offense needs a boost. That offense needs a guy who's going to be more reliable at the running back position. And Travis Etienne has just had some like injury issues. He's had fumble issues, right? He's never been consistent. And Tank Bigsby, as fun as he is as a football player, is probably not to that level yet. And I think a guy like Ashton Genty changes the way you run an offense. He changes the way that you build an offense. And I think that's kind of what Liam Cohn needs for that offense. And I think just hypothetically, right, if he goes 5, if Genty goes 5, which it seems to be the next like consensus, then you get the Raiders who could take Mason Graham, but they have other needs, especially like along the offensive line. They desperately need another tackle. The Jets are not going to take another interior defensive lineman because they have Quinnen Williams on that huge extension. I don't think Carolina takes him.
Jalen Walker seems like he's in pen. For
I think they'll go edge. I think they'll go with a pass rusher. The Saints, I don't think would take an interior defensive lineman yet. Maybe Chicago does.
The Saints are a spot, and Carolina's a spot. I know Carolina was the team Brett and I talked about last night, but 8 and 9 is an area that if I'm Greer and I'm McDaniel and Mason Graham is still on the board there, I am really, really considering going up. New Orleans moving back to 13 would give them a real shot at Shador, still at 13. Carolina moving back to 13 would still give them one of those edges because there are 3 or 4 of them that I kind of have in the same tier. So this is an area getting ahead of San Fran, who likes to take best player available, getting ahead of Chicago. I think that those are 2 spots that I'm looking to get up and get Graham. There are not many guys I'd move up for in this class. He's a guy that if the Dolphins had the 3rd pick right now, if the Dolphins had the 4th pick right now, Mason Graham's the guy we're talking about being on this football team.
Yeah. My thought on it, honestly, as much as I love Mason Graham, D tackle kind of is one of those positions that naturally gets pushed down. Doesn't matter how good he is, how good a player is, they get pushed down. I'd say 9 years out of 10. The one exception was probably the year where Sue and McCoy went 2 and 3. You just don't see it. I think for a lot of people, Mason Graham coming 20, 25 pounds lighter than he most expected him at the combine has scared people off. And the other thing, he didn't work out at the combine, and I'm pretty sure he's one of the Michigan players that did not work out at the pro day either. So I think the fact that a lot of scouts really, unless you did a private workout with him, you're relying almost 100% on film. He is one people just, I say it this way, it sounds worse than I mean it. People are just overthinking it. They're just overthinking stuff because they're not, it's kind of a, what have you done for me lately thing. And you just start picking people apart. Him and Zach Sealer sounds like a really good building block to me. Immediately makes everybody on the defense better if he were to do that. So if he slides, I think it's more position.
But what do you have about Walter Nolan going ahead of him?
Look, the Niners are a team as good as they've been under John Lynch. They have made some strange picks. The Javon Kinlaw pick, they traded DeForest Buckner to go get and then drafted Javon Kinlaw. That didn't work out for him. Now, granted, I don't think everybody loved Kinlaw as much as people love Mason Graham, but Kinlaw was a very fast riser in the draft, and many people thought he was going to be a lot better than he was. But even before that, they tend to gamble on players that have that have more physical upside. Sometimes it works. Buckner, Armstead, before that, Eric Armstead. Sometimes it doesn't. It's not the Niners, but who was the guy that we picked up when we were tanking? Robert and Kandichi. Like, the athleticism's there and it just doesn't work out. So when you just look at it right there, Mason Graham doesn't have the most impressive physical traits. And again, because he came in later than he expected, I think he needed to kill the workouts, and he chose to rest on the film. And some team, whether it's us or another team, if he falls, is going to be the benefactor of that.
For sure.
I think the biggest thing for me is that I looked at this defensive tackle class, and just from a wider lens, I think this is the defensive tackle class where you shouldn't trade up for one. Largely
That's
because
fair.
I look at the second round guys, I look at like the day 3 guys. I think you find a starter on day 3 in this year's draft. I think like most years you don't find a day 3 starter at defensive tackle. You just find a really good role player. But this is like a historically deep defensive tackle class. I can't say the same thing about corner. I can't say the same thing about safety.
Yeah,
And
Brent,
so
when Brent and I were talking about the corner position last night, we ran out of love for guys very quickly.
like I love Jahdae Barron. I think that guy is a special talent. I think he's going to be a guy who plays a long time in the NFL with a lot of versatility. He fits perfectly in this offense or this defense, excuse me. Seems like you may have to potentially consider trading up though, because I think that there may be a team that takes him earlier than you. It would not shock me. To the same degree, I also love Malachi Starks, but I don't love Malachi Starks as a safety. I love Malachi Starks as a nickel corner. Are you taking a nickel corner round 1? I'd consider it. For a guy who's as talented as Malachi Starks is,
I'd consider it at 23. I don't know if I'd consider it at 13.
I think the Dolphins need to stop considering value. I think whenever they consider value, like personally, I think whenever they consider value, they make a bad pick.
Yep.
I would just take the player you love the most and just figure it out.
Yep.
But like, I think to some degree, when you look at this whole idea for me is that like, I don't see a pathway where trading up is their best option, because I think you have, for a team like Miami, you need multiple young players. You need multiple impactful players from this rookie class. Like you at least need 2 or 3.
Yeah.
If you trade up, you're giving up your 3rd round pick, which is where you'd find that impactful player. And I'm not comfortable giving up a 3rd round pick for a team that has needs.
Yeah.
Unless the player's a game changer.
Per Tom Pelissaro, the Jaguars are willing to move up to the 2nd spot.
But to me, that's not
going to
flash
happen.
and empty. To
No,
me,
that would be for Travis Hunter, but it's not
Yeah.
going to happen. It seems like this is all smoke, but Cleveland stays at 2 and takes Travis Hunter.
Since Carbon Dinosaur wanted this, yes, I've been working all day, but I have seen apparently the knee concerns that have been mentioned about Will Johnson are legit, and a lot of people are going to say he's going to take a fall. I have said this before. I will say it again. I think Will Johnson is one of the truly elite players in this draft. I think he is by far and away the number 2 corner behind Travis Hunter. And I think you could argue just based on corner ability alone, Johnson may be better. If people are saying he has knee injury and he's going to fall, I can't say anything about that. I think it's overblown to an extent, but I also think you got to gamble on talent because, as I will point out, one of the people being loudest about Will Johnson's injury concern, multiple times drunk in my ear, told me if Jalen Phillips stayed healthy, he would be the best player in his draft class. And he has not stayed healthy, but this person still wants to give him another year because of the physical talent. And I like Jalen Phillips, but he had injury concerns. Does Will Johnson have an actual knee issue? I don't know. He had off-season surgery at one point, but he did not miss time because of a knee injury or knee surgery. And there are players that were, much like, and it's apples to oranges with what player it is and position. I think you got to gamble on the talent. I think Will Johnson's that level of talent. You would do the same. We did the same for Jalen Phillips. Heck, there are players like Landon Dickerson. He fell because he was always injured at Alabama. He has not missed time in the pros. So you just got to take that risk, and I'm willing to take it for Will Johnson. Some people won't. I think I would, and there are other players like that. I would. I love Josh Simmons. My only question is, can he be a guard? Yes, the patella tendon scares me, but I would not be against taking him if you think he can be a guard.
My biggest issue with Will Johnson is not necessarily just the fact that he's got a knee problem. It's the way that it was worded by someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was Albert Breer who sort of leaked that news first. And it was not The specific wording, to paraphrase, was like, it's not a short-term issue, but it will affect him in the long term. That to me screams.
He's also an Ohio State fan.
But that to me, if that's true, and I don't know if it is, I don't have access to medicals. If that's true, that screams degenerative knee issue like Todd Gurley and Jay Ajayi. And I'm really concerned about a cornerback with degenerative knee issues because it feels like all it takes, and I'm not a doctor, all it takes is one bad knee injury and you're suddenly no longer as effective as you once were. For a team like Miami, man, I don't want more of those guys. I've had enough of those guys. I've had enough of those guys for 10 years. No more degenerative injury problems for me. No more. I'm done with it. Take a guy who's been healthy.
That's fair. I would say this even if he wasn't a Michigan player. If he, like, when you're that level of talent, I'm willing to take the risk on him. I understand where some Dolphins come from.
Brett, finish.
What?
I said finish.
Oh.
What? The last thing I wanted to ask about that mock, about Schrager's mock, before we move on to our own, is he had 2 tight ends go in the top 10. And I think that conventional draft wisdom will say that's not going to happen. But it looks like there is a lot of love for Colston Loveland and a lot of love for Tyler Warren. So do you guys actually see a realistic possibility where 2 of those guys go in the top 10?
Not top 10.
Top 10 is stretching it, but I've been very consistent in thinking and saying I think Colston Loveland's a lot closer to Tyler Warren than many people want to give credit for. Michigan did not have even a competent quarterback. Michigan didn't even have a bad quarterback. Some would argue Michigan didn't even have a quarterback this year. So, and they tried 3 different guys, and it did not work out for them. So I think a lot of people just don't really appreciate or forgot, because it is a what have you done for me lately sport. I think people kind of forget how good Colston Loveland is because of the Michigan quarterback situation. And at the same time, no one was talking about Tyler Warren last year, and we saw what happened. He becomes the passing offense for, Penn State. Remember, he was the backup last year to a 4th-round pick. So he gets a chance, circumstances change, and he shoots up the board. And that's not saying anything bad against him, just showing just what difference circumstances can make.
I think, and I've been a big proponent in this, is that 2 tight ends will go in the top 20.
I do agree with that.
I think Colston Loveland will go higher than people maybe think he will or thought he would at one point. It seems like the Colts at 14, because they're behind the Dolphins, is sort of like the perfect landing spot for the second of those tight ends, unless Tyler Warren falls. But it would not shock me if we see a team trade up for a tight end. Yeah. Just because I think that, like, when you have 2 tight ends like this in an era of football that has now begun to lean more towards preferring to have tight ends who are effective players, suddenly those who can do a little bit of everything become impactful players for you. So I don't know if it'll be the Dolphins, but I would not shock me if a team starts calling up to be like, hey, you interested?
Yeah.
Like we want the tight end. The team that really stands out to me, don't know if they trade up, but yeah, Chargers got enough links with Michigan where maybe Colston Loveland is a Charger next year. That would not shock me.
That would not shock me. But Jordan, let's get into this mock. We said we'd get into it within the 5 minutes, and we're 25 minutes.
Yeah, that's what happens.
That's my fault.
No, it's not your fault. It's the content. So
I feel like whenever Kevin comes on, we're always an hour and 20, an hour and 40, and that's not a bad thing.
So we'll do it how we normally do, and we'll also do a 7th-round Dolphins mock. Jordan, why don't you take 1? Kev, you take 2. I'll take 3.
Cool.
Setting yourself up, huh? I think that you're giving me the easy one. I think at this point it's all but official, and will be official kind of shortly after the draft starts, that Cam Ward's a Titan.
Yeah. I'll waste no time on this. It's Travis Hunter.
Yeah. The Giants do apparently want to trade this pick. And again, said this yesterday. there are rumors, well, not for this, but if that they do want to kind of move down a little bit to maybe get a tight end, I heard. But if they stay like this, I don't think you can pass on Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter's going third, but I think this is like the easiest pick.
Yeah, I think that when you look at it, like you said before, Abdul Carter is going to be the third player off the board. It's just a matter of, is it the Giants? Is it the Bears? I saw Carolina. I saw the Jaguars wouldn't totally blow me away. So I think that a number of these teams that are looking up to come up to 3 makes sense. And then I think the Giants moving down, drafting Abdul Carter would be great. But I also wouldn't mind with the needs the Giants have moving down a couple spots and picking up a different player. I'll waste no time with the Patriots. It's looking like, even though I probably would take Mason Graham if I was doing it myself, it looks like Will Campbell is going to be the Patriots pick at 4 overall.
Yeah. And again, Kev, I don't know if you saw this rumor, but there is a rumor that the Patriots and the Bears have an agreement in principle if Hunter and Carter go 2-3 for the Bears to trade up.
Would not shock me if they really love Ashton Genty. I think their pick will be on offense, inevitably. Jacksonville, if the board falls this way, I think they'll take Ashton Genty. I think they'll consider Mason Graham, but if the board falls this way, I don't think they'll pass up Ashton Genty's talent.
Yeah. The Raiders, if the board falls this way, I think they have to go best offensive lineman, especially because they haven't re-signed Colton Miller. I think it sounds like they're just going to let him play out his deal. So I would go Membu. Part of me really wants to go corner for them because they don't really have one, but I think Membu is the pick there.
Would not shock me if Kelvin Banks was the pick there too. Seems like he is quickly moving up the board.
Yes. Or everybody had him too far down the board.
Yeah, or we're all just returning to normal, which is very much a possibility.
I think this is you, Jordan.
Yeah, it's me. The Jets, look, I think if Membu would have been there, that would have been easy for them to do. I'm going to, unfortunately, continue to agree with the way Schrager had it. I think they're kind of down to Membu or Tyler Warren. And I think that that's the direction they go there. Adding a piece to their offense that Dolphin fans are going to roll their eyes at and be upset with. And I think last year, Brett, if you went back, I think there were a couple drafts towards the end there that we had Brock Bowers going to the Jets. And I don't think that that's different with the way we're going to mock it today. So Tyler Warren is a Jet.
Me? Give me Jalen Walker. Again, I don't think we need to waste too much time on this.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Carolina takes one of the edges.
The Saints, I just don't think they're going to take I want to have them take Shedeur Sanders, but anything I've learned, the Saints don't do what you don't go after quarterback. Go to the BPA, Jordan. I think they'll go Michael Williams. I'm going to be boring and follow what Traeger says. It just seems like a Saints pick.
Okay, so we have Georgia Edge back to back. And I think that to some Bears fans, I mean, with Edge being such a need for them, I think that they're going to see that kind of as a spot where they were hoping to get one of those guys and not have to take Edge 3. I'm going to go a little off the board with the Bears pick, something that we saw them do with one of their picks last year. I'm probably going to go outside of conventional wisdom, and I'm going to give them Tet McMillan. I think that if Ashton Genty was there, if they were able to trade up and get him, I think that would be great. I do think that number 3 wide receiver is a little bit of a need for the Bears, and I think that they're going to look to add a playmaker for Ben Johnson. I think that there are a lot of players, Membu, Will Campbell, the edges, even a guy like Tyler Warren, Genty. I think all those guys would make sense for the Bears. So if it fell this way, the Bears to me are a prime candidate to drop back a little bit, but needing to stay here because we're not doing trades. I'm going to give the Bears Ted McMillan at 10.
Okay, pick 11. Christ. Show me best available. I'm torn between Shamar Stewart and Mason Graham because I think both guys are possible candidates for this. No, you know what? Give me Kelvin Banks. I think they're going to go offensive tackle. I think they're going to try and solve that need now because they desperately need to.
Well, if the board falls like this, the Cowboys are taking Genty.
No, Genty went, didn't it? Did we not have Genty going? Yeah, we had him going at 5.
Oh, we did have him going at 5. I didn't even realize that. Go to players. That's how much I'm paying attention. Who are the players? Yeah. Well, I actually think if the board goes this way, the Cowboys are going to take. It's either going to be Barron or Graham. So. I'm going to go with Barron for 2 reasons. 1, the Cowboys take Texas players. 2, they just got burned by taking a Michigan D tackle 2 years ago. I don't think they want to go again with that.
I think the Dolphins would be pissed if Kelvin Banks and Janae Barrett are the 2 picks right ahead of them.
But then they look at the board and see that Mason Graham fell to them at 13, and being pissed off goes away very quickly.
You want me to be honest? Mark this down as the prediction. I wouldn't be shocked if they traded down if Kelvin Banks and Barron were both off the board.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I think that they would very much consider trading down to see if a team wanted to get ahead of Indianapolis for Loveland.
Well, Brett, your dream has come true. It's our final mock draft before draft night. Is the last night, and the top 3 players on the board all have Michigan logos next to their name.
How's that work?
You should go Malachi Starks.
I was going to say,
just go completely off the board.
No, apparently though, I forget.
Evan Wari.
I do think that there is recent news that the Dolphins are very much in on Malachi Starks.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you have to go if the board falls this way, you have to go Mason Graham. I find it hard to pass on Will Johnson just because we don't have a corner, but Mason Graham's just too good, I think.
Yeah, I think that you could put Mason Graham here and kind of move on relatively quickly. And we're really tight on with what Schrager did because it makes sense. I'll stick with the fast picks for Indy there and go Colston Loveland. I think that we were talking about how them possibly trading up for him. I think that if the board falls away, it does. I think that the Colts leave this draft very, very happy. And I also think that they are somewhat of a sleeper team for Shedeur Sanders there.
Yeah. I think the Colts are going to take a pass catcher of some kind. So is it Tet or is it one of the tight ends? I don't really know, but I think they need to give Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, maybe, but probably not, actual weapons. They need adults in that room. Atlanta, I think this is an edge of some kind.
Yeah.
And can you just bring up the edges?
Yes. Wait, before you do, I just want to plug sticktothemodel.com's draft sim. Me and Brett have been using this a couple times in a row, and it's a really, really easy to use, functional, and well-run draft site. So everybody, if you're looking to do mock drafts over the next 24 hours, which I'm sure that almost 400 people listening to this right now are, this is the one you should be checking out. All right, Kev, here are the edges for you.
I'm going to go Mike Green. I know there's the character concerns. I know that there are things that he will have to answer for, but it seems like he'll still go first round, and the Falcons desperately need a pass rusher.
All right.
Brett loves Mike Green.
Honestly, if it wasn't for the character concern, I think he's a top 10 pick. He's killed it in everything he's been asked to do. And that's the one guy who I think has done that this offseason. Arizona. He is also undersized, yes. I'm going to go might be a little off the board here, but I'll give them Josh Simmons. I think the only concern I have with Simmons is the patella, but I think you can put him in, and they do need to keep building that offensive line. And I just think they're one of the teams that will gamble on pure talent as well as injuries. So I just think you go with that.
For Cincinnati, I'm going to go back to a pick that I made a lot earlier in the draft process. And I'm going to give the Bengals Shamar Stewart. I think that he fits that defensive line and what they want to do on it. I think while listed as an edge, I think he can also be a lot more of that 4-3 defensive end for Cincinnati. And I think that they're going to be very happy. I think there are some other guys ranked higher, enlisted higher, and drafted higher that the Bengals would prefer Shamar Stewart to.
And that's just the Bengals pick. They're assholes for sure.
Very interesting pick here for Seattle because, man, they desperately need wide receivers. They probably need on interior offensive line, but they don't always pick offensive linemen in the first round. I don't think that'll change this year. It's not listed as one of their primary needs, but I think they'll go Will Johnson. You look at their cornerback room. It is Tariq Woolen and a whole bunch of other football players and Weatherspoon in the nickel, but they don't have another outside corner. I think Will Johnson gives you 3 formidable corners.
Yeah, and I think McDonald, coming from kind of that Baltimore line of thinking, when you get a guy that was ranked a lot higher that ends up falling, some injury stuff, this and that, but you take the guy that falls into your lap, and I can definitely see Seattle doing that here.
Okay, so I got Tampa. Who are the players available, Jordan?
I got you.
I know he did Jihad Campbell. I think the labrum makes him fall maybe out of, and position might make him fall out of the first round. I'll give him James Pierce. I think he fits into that defense well, and I just think he's better. Best player available too.
I think this for Denver is a prime trade spot. I think the guy they're going to pick probably – look, there are talks of Amari and Hampton going earlier. I don't think that he's a first-round running back. That's just me. I kind of personally prefer the Ohio State running backs to him. I think both of them have aspects of their game that make them better. And I think that because of that, if you look at Denver, another area of need for them is adding another wide receiver, maybe adding another guy to their defensive line, which is the direction that I think that they're going to go in. And at 20, I'm going to give the Broncos Kenneth Grant.
Really? I think they're going to end up going running back.
But I wanted to be a little bit different.
Pittsburgh, I will not be different here. It's Shedeur Sanders. Mainly because Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson are your quarterbacks right now. And I think we've all watched Skylar Thompson to go, you don't want that to be a thing that you have to run with next year.
Yeah. Chargers, they do need another wide receiver. Look, Jim Harbaugh spent a lot of time getting destroyed by some Brian Hartline wide receivers, and I think it's about time he adds one. So give the Chargers Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah, I think Egbuka is a guy that's going to go probably a little earlier than people think.
I agree.
But looking at Green Bay, when I'm looking at what they need to add to their team, I think that this is an area where you might even see one of the other corners, Brett, that we talked about last night, go kind of a little bit earlier than you think. And as I start looking down here, Trey Amos, Maxwell Harrison, I think it's going to be one of those guys. And at 23, I believe it is, I'm going to give the Packers Maxwell Harrison.
Minnesota. There's a few ways I think this could go. I think they could go offensive line with Gray Zabel, but I don't think they'll go offensive line with Gray Zabel. Could see him taking the next defensive tackle, whether that be Derek Hardman or Walter Nolan. But I look at what they need, and I think they really need another defensive back, a versatile defensive back to fit in the Brian Flores defense, prepare for life without Harrison Smith, who is 1 year closer to calling it quits. He's like 40 years old. It's going to happen eventually. I think it's Malachi Starks. I think that he's a versatile defensive back who can play as a safety, who can play as a nickel, right? Like that fits what Brian Flores wants. And I think that's the fit that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. I think the last mock that me and Brett did, I had Starks also going to Minnesota. I think that either one of those guys, whether it's Starks or Emanwari, would be a great fit for Flores.
Houston needs to upgrade the offensive line. They also traded Laramie Tunsil. So if you believe the rumors, they are one of the teams who could go Tyler Booker, but I am not going to go Tyler Booker. I'm not going to go Gray Zabel either. Keep going. Show me the interior offensive line real quick. And we are actually going to go Donovan Jackson, who I think is probably the first, in my opinion, should probably be the first pure guard since the other guys have tackle upside. And Donovan Jackson might too. He ended up playing most of the year at left tackle as well.
I would think that Booker would be the first interior guy taken. Truthfully.
Yeah, but he's an unathletic fat ass, as Mr. S likes to say. So,
looking at the Rams, I think the Rams have needs at every level of their defense, pretty much, other than that defensive line that they addressed last year. So I guess 2 levels of their defense is what I should have said. But when you're looking at the way this board's falling, and you look specifically at this quarterback class, I think that the Rams are really in a position to add Jackson Dart to this team and let him sit behind Matthew Stafford for a year. And when Matthew Stafford retires at the end of the year, Jackson Dart will be the future quarterback of the Rams. Because I don't see the Rams getting into a position next year where they'll be able to take a guy like Arch Manning or one of those top guys. And I think they're going to see the value of Jackson Dart here near the end of the first round.
All right. Baltimore is me, correct?
Baltimore is you.
Give me Tyler Booker. I think they're going to take another interior offensive lineman. And while, yes, he is unathletic and not the greatest mover, he fits a lot in a gap run scheme, which is a lot of what Baltimore runs. And I think it's really scary to have him ahead of Derrick Henry.
Okay, so Detroit's just going to keep taking best player available. I'd give them, and they do need some help on a D-line. I'd give them Derek Harmon.
Derek Harmon.
Sup, Ozzy?
Say it again.
I just said sup, Ozzy, because he said.
Looking at the Commanders, I'm going to go with a pick that I think it was Mason when he was on with us made for the Commanders. I'm going to give them Ezuraka from Boston College, the edge. I think he finds a way to sneak into the end of the first round. And I think that Washington is a spot that can do that. They need a little more help on the edge. And I think that he's a guy that'll come in right away, start, and help them continue to contend. There are a number of ways they can go on the defensive side of the ball. I think Jahad Campbell's another guy that they could take here. But I'm going to go Ezuraka here.
All right, Buffalo, I'm going to go with the best punter available in whatever the Florida State. No. Normally, I would just take this pick for them and give them a player who doesn't fit. But I feel like we at least have to be fair to them, given that we were fair to the other 2 teams in the division. Give me Jahad Campbell. I think Jahad Campbell fits a lot of what they want to do. And truthfully, right, like I'm just kind of like vibing this late in draft. I don't know if there's really a need there outside of like corner. I don't love any of the corners available. Maybe they take another receiver, but I think they sort of seem to like what they have with Shakir and Keon Coleman enough to not take a receiver.
Yeah. Chiefs. It's either going to be, if the draft fell this way, Zabel or Cornerly, I think. I think they'd go Zabel.
And I was going to have the Eagles take Gray Zabel as well. I think that that's a direction they go. But when looking at the Eagles and looking at this, there are a couple guys here that you plug into the Eagles, and they really help. But the one name that sticks out to me, it's not a huge need for the Eagles, but he's a guy that I think is a luxury pick, being as good as they are. And I'm going to give them Nick Emanwari at 32. I think that Emanwari is a guy that could get overdrafted, could drop a little bit. But I think with the Eagles, he's going to end up being a star.
Okay.
Brett, I think that was the quickest we made it through 32 picks. Props to us.
We are not doing a second round of that one. I know you said you tried to talk me into that.
I think once you get to like 24 hours before the draft, there's no need to keep explaining.
No, we did Mason Graham with how the draft fell in. But yeah, so quick, Jordan, go get set one up. We're going to do 7th round Dolphins mock real quick, and then we will call it a day. So
I'm trying to speed up. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to make sure that we get Mason Graham. I don't know how I'm going to do that. But we're gonna sit here and ad lib till we get
we may be here for 25 minutes until we get Mason Graham. But
do I think so? No, I do not. I would be shocked if Mason Graham fell to 13, but I would run to pick up. And
I feel like if we took him at 13 in this, we feel like we got to take him 13 in that as well and see what happens from there. But I don't think it will be there now.
Shout out to Bobby Schaus, who I will always remember on the show a year ago mentioned us going after Patrick Paul. So Bobby, if you want to give us a little hints for who we're taking in round 2 this year, that'd be pretty nice.
Guys, I'm struggling to get us Mason Graham here.
It's fine. You don't have to give us Mason Graham. We'll just go normal.
All right. So I'm going to give us just well, here. This is what I'll do. I'll do it one more time, and I will share it.
We don't have to go with Mason Graham with the 13th pick for this one, since this is going to be separate.
All right. So top 12 that we are picking off of will look.
We did laugh at you, Bobby. I do remember that.
Laugh at him because Patrick Paul sucks. Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Shador 3, which looks like it might not happen anymore. Abdul, Graham, Genty, Will Campbell. We got 2 edges that end up going there, a receiver and 2 tackles.
We also have the rant of Falcons trading up.
These are the players available. If the board fell like this, we will take a vote. Brett, who do you have us taking at 13 if this is how the board falls?
So I will take a swipe to my ego and say I will buy into the Will Johnson is hurt hype. So I will take him off. So to me, it becomes either Tyler Warren or Jahdae Barron. I will say Barron because I just think it's too big of a drop off at corner. Like, you can maybe get someone good, but I think as good as Warren is, I just think we can't pass up on needs for this. And I don't think he's significantly better as a tight end than Barron is as a corner. So my vote would go towards Barron.
Kevin?
I'm going to agree with Jahdae Barron. I think he's like, if you're trying to replace Jalen Ramsey's versatility, he's the best bet. And I think he will not be as good as Jalen Ramsey, but will be a very talented starting cornerback in the NFL.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree and go with Barron with you guys. I do think that we're going to somewhat regret letting Will Johnson slide. But I think with the direction everything's going here, Jahdae Barron is the direction the Dolphins are going.
As the meme says, if I speak, I get in trouble. I will not get in trouble, and I do not want to be in trouble.
All right. Oh, wait. I only did.
Great mock.
Yay.
All right, good luck, guys.
Yay. Good job, guys. Let me figure out how to re-navigate this thing. I'm going to stop sharing. All right, guys, we made it. We did it. We did 7 rounds. We ended up with 1 player.
What a weird trade up.
Yeah. We traded up 0 spots.
But gave up all our picks to charity.
Exactly. Honestly, it seems like something Chris Greer would do.
We somehow got our picks taken from us again for something Stephen Ross did.
All right. Well,
He can't keep getting away with it.
Retroactively took picks away from us.
Yep.
All right. So we are up. It is the second round. These are the top players available. If you want me to go positionally so you can see things, let me know. Or just let me know who you would pick. Brett, we'll start with you again.
I am tempted to go with a Longhorn 1 and 2 pick and say Alfred Collins.
Horns down.
Fair enough. But Darius Alexander's tempting too. I mean, if you go to OT, I can tell you who I would pick too.
We know, Brett. Oh, Mbo's out.
Oh, is he under guard? I wonder.
Let's see if somebody took him ahead of us.
He's probably listed as a guard.
Yeah, I think he's probably listed as a guard.
I just wanted Brett to think we couldn't take him.
My vote, because as much as I want to go offensive guard, we've done it too much. As Mr. S says, he is very sexy. I'll say Darius Alexander to be different.
I was torn between Darius Alexander and the Arizona guard Jonah, however you say that last name.
No, Brett had to say it 3 times last night, so Kevin, you have to try it.
Savanea?
Yeah, that's probably close.
That's as close as I'll get, I think, without a pronunciation guide in front of my face.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to lean that they go interior offensive line first.
Yeah.
Knowing, again, that I think there's still some defensive tackles you could take a little bit later. So give me Jonah Savanea, something like that.
Yeah.
So
to be clear, I wanted him, but I went different. But yes, I would have said Savanea.
Brett's going to laugh, but I kind of prefer Mbo.
I'm not against Mbo. If you want to take Mbo, I would not complain with Mbo.
So Brett, for you, I'll go Mbo. Unless you're set on them taking a defensive lineman.
So I'm actually going to side, and I was just thinking about this. I'm going to side with Kev here, and the reason is Savanea, and the reason is, what is one thing Chris Greer loves to draft? Someone who is proven versatile, which Mbo we think will be, but Savanea is, but also he loves to draft team captains. And Savanea is a team captain. So
that is very, very true. So we will go Jonah Savanea.
Yeah,
the Dolphins at 48 as we wait for this
also
draft to stimulate itself.
It does love that.
98. I wasn't going to say it. I'm glad our admin did. We are on the board at 98. Brett, where does your mind go first?
Ty Robinson or CJ West doesn't sound bad. I would have said I really do like Za Frazier, and I don't think doubling up on corners is a bad idea, but I don't think if Frazier's the best one available, I don't think we do. So I would say either Robinson or West at D line.
Kev,
who are the corners available? Could see him doubling down. Just want to see. I think they double down later.
Oh, no, Williams is tempting too.
No Williams and Zafrez are like the only two that I think I'd consider taking one now, but there are still some guys I like later on. A little bit more than maybe go to defensive tackle again. If CJ West is still there, I think you take CJ West.
Yeah, I think it has to be one of those two.
I'm looking at CJ West. I'm still looking at Gunnar Helm. I think he's the last of kind of that tier of tight end. Mike McDaniel is going to look at a couple of these guys probably at 118. This is probably a little too early from that. That Mike McDaniel is going to be looking at a couple of these guys. But I think that the first 3 picks have to be in whatever order: corner, interior offensive line, and defensive tackle. And we took a corner, we took an interior offensive line. So I think, and I'll go to your guys' opinion on the guy, but I think it's got to be either Ty Robinson or CJ West.
Jordan, real quick, just go to safety. I don't think they'd take a safety, but it wouldn't shock me if someone like Jonas Sanker or Billy Bowman was the pick. But I don't think they will be the pick per se.
No. Yeah, I'd probably say you can't go wrong with either Robinson or West. I think West seems to be a little, although on Dolphins Twitter, Robinson's starting to get a bit more support. I think CJ West kind of fits more with what we want to do.
All right, we will go CJ West at 98. And we are up again at 118. Kev, what are your thoughts here at 118?
This is where I'd look at doubling down on corner, I think. If you wanted a second corner, I think the 4th round is when you start to consider that second corner. I like Noah Williams. I like
he ain't going to be here.
I think he'd be a 3rd rounder, so I'm sort of hesitant on taking him. I like Upton Stout as a nickel corner.
But Kevin, it was you earlier, I believe, on this pod that said if a guy is there, it's because he's there.
I don't take them, though. I try and avoid guys who I think will obviously not be there, right? Like, because when you have an AI, right, it's like so difficult to just like guarantee that they're not on the board here. And it feels like unfair to be like, well, Noah Williams will be there. And then he goes in the 90s and everyone's like, well, why'd you take him? Kind of like everyone loves to do that. Who are the safeties available? There's one name that I think really fits if he's there. The only name there that I like is Caleb Ransaw.
Which seems to be consistent. And a lot of people have him as a corner anyway.
I think he's more of a nickel corner. I don't think he could play safety consistently. I think he's a little bit too inconsistent in coverage. And he gets a little bit flat-footed for my liking.
Upton Stout did visit us last
I
week.
do really like Upton Stout. I'm going to say they double down on corner. Largely because I think all the tight ends who they would consider taking are gone. And I would go between Upton Stout and like Quincy Riley or Kobe Bryant.
If we're saying that Noah Williams isn't, if he's ineligible to be picked, and we're going on this list, I'm going either Upton Stout or Kobe Bryant.
I'll say Upton Stout because we had him for a visit. Yeah, Noah Williams, he's probably going round 2.
Yeah, I think he'll go round 2 or round 3 for sure.
I want to just really quickly go to, how do we go to, just to show people your picks? I guess that would be it. Just to show people for a second, as we get to the end of day 3, what we've done so far, taking 2 corners and then an interior defensive and offensive lineman. All right, 135. What are we thinking?
My first thought goes to safety. I just don't know what the board looks like there.
It's there for you.
Malachi Moore, Dean Clark is an intriguing center field safety. But I don't think there's anyone there that really stands out to me.
I think Ransaw is really the only guy again.
Ransaw's the only guy, but I think you took Upton Stout to play his role.
Right.
And so unless you're taking another one to compete for the same role, which would be a little weird, I think you would just take like an edge or another tackle and effectively just take like most valuable position. I don't love any of those tackles.
Here are the defensive tackles available if you're looking to double up there.
And we're getting to the point now where it ain't worth it.
Jamari Caldwell maybe as a run stuffer,
Yeah.
but I'm just
Do-
not.
Do you think that there's a chance that we take a running back in this draft? Because I do.
I think there's a chance, and this might be the pick you do it. But they also have picks in 150, don't they? Have another pick
Yes,
sort of
we have
relatively soon.
we have 150 and 155 coming up.
I would say you probably take 150 or 155.
To
What's
me,
the wide receivers look like?
yep, they are.
Yeah, that's the.
here.
Ugh.
I'm going to put my foot down right here and say the guy I want it. It might be a little early for him, but if I'm looking at these names, the one that jumps out to me is Nick Nash.
The one who
That's
jumps
what
out
I
to
was
me is
thinking.
Isaac Tesla.
That's a little high for Nick Nash, but he's what we're missing.
What, a 26-year-old?
Yeah.
You're missing a little experience there.
So I think that with 150 and 155, we should be looking at running back receiver. I think that here we're either going to double up on a defensive tackle, double up on an offensive lineman, or take a safety or an off-ball linebacker.
What's the edge position looking like? Would not shock me if they took another edge. Maybe Powell Ryland.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That was the name that.
Or Sorrell, like Baron Sorrell, if you like what he brings. But there's not one who like stands out to me that I'm like gotta pick.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
I would say Powell Ryland if we go. I would say Powell Ryland.
All right, is that the direction we're going, Kevin? You approve?
Yeah, Powell Ryland, I think, is the one I'm most intrigued by.
All right, Antoine Powell Ryland. Let this thing update. It is 150. I am going to pull up the wide receivers and I'm going to pull up the running backs and let Brett start because there's a Michigan player sitting at the bottom there.
No, I'm not taking him.
Jeez.
Is this still the
that running back room got a lot less attractive?
Yeah. I do like Taj Brooks a lot. I think
honestly at this point I'd probably
I like Jarquez Hunter more than I like Taj Brooks.
I also like Hunter, and I mean I'm not the biggest Ollie Gordon fan in the world, but I understand the appeal with him.
Yeah, let's go Hunter.
I think if you're looking for a running back who fits differently than what they already have, Jarquez Hunter is probably your best bet because he plays a little bit more physical.
So do we want to take Hunter or do we want to take one of these receivers that are there and then look for a running back in 5 picks?
I take the running back now. I think there's still a few receivers I like.
All right. We are going to go Jarquez Hunter from Auburn. And
I was hoping Martinez or Neal would be there.
Yes. But which is why, to me, I think when you're sitting at 135, and that's something we learned from this, is that if that's where a little run of them is going to go. So maybe you take one at 135. Brett,
Mr. S says Diana Rossini just tweeted that the Dolphins are trying to trade it down.
Well, duh. Like, we've only been saying that for a while now. That to me screams you want one of the defensive tackles. But look at this list, Brett. I know that we already took Savania earlier in the draft, but Jackson Slater is still there at 155.
Yeah, I would be okay with doubling up on him. Who do they have at tackle, offensive tackle? Chase Lunt is a guy. Holland Pierce. At this point, Chase Lunt is probably moving inside. Holland Pierce he's not this raw, but he, in terms of being close to contributing, think of that Isaiah Prince we drafted a couple years ago out of Ohio State.
I think he's as raw as that. I think he's 3 years away from being anything. Truthfully, like I think he's 3 years away from even being a player. That's
probably fair. I think I love Chase Lunt, but we draft him all the time, so it's kind of hard to. I kind of want to get a little different there.
All the off-ball linebackers.
Ty Hamilton. I would go in for Ty Hamilton. Get another D tackle.
I'm fine doubling down at D tackle.
Ty Hamilton is the pick at 165.
They need about 3 of them, so.
Mm-hmm.
As we wait till our next pick, that is the long wait that we are going to have to endure on Saturday. And we are back on the board at 224 with a couple picks left.
I like Jamon Dumas Johnson, I think.
Okay, we have a vote for Dumas Johnson.
Mm.
I'm gonna go. I think again, this is a chance for Nick Nash.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where this wide receiver class is so difficult to get behind some talent. Like,
I would
It
take
ain't
Nick
great.
Nash here. I'd also
Yeah.
take Ricky White. I don't know what you guys think about Ricky White.
I do
but
like Ricky White. I'd
Special
honestly probably
teamer.
say,
special teamer, so he will be guaranteed to have a role.
yeah, if he's taller.
Kind of a deep threat, bigger guy. Like, I think that could fit what Miami needs. And I think
Yeah, I
Nick
would say
Nash
Rick-
is maybe a little bit too similar to like Nick Westbrook-Ikine for me.
Yeah, I would say Ricky White is one I would take my vote over Nick Nash.
Okay, let's one more time look at the safety class, see if there's anything there. As we still haven't attacked there yet.
I like Ray on
Ken,
Lane for
anything
very
else?
similar reasons, but I mean, keeps going down.
Honestly, I think at this point, I'll be honest, like if we don't take one on day 2, I think we're just rolling with who we got. Yeah, those safeties don't do anything for me.
All right,
there's a whole bunch of special teamers at this point,
Ricky White.
which it's the 7th round. So
Are we going Ricky White?
Yeah.
Ricky White is the pick. And we are back on the board. This would be about the time that I would start possibly looking at special teamers, but they are not here. We have 2 more picks, Brett. What are you thinking? Do we take a quarterback at some point here?
You can go quarterback.
I don't see a single guy here that
I don't really
though.
see many. Like Curtis Rourke, I don't think is going to be here at this point. Go to tight end. I think this is where you go and get like.
Well, I am on tight end. KJ Jefferson's here. Oh, Conyers.
Conyers is definitely one. I think. I'll tell you what, Thomas Fedone does fit what we want to do at tight end. He's not my favorite, but he is someone that I could see us liking at late. So I would say Fedone or Conyers. What do you say?
My vote
Kev?
is Conyers, but I will allow Kev to break the tie.
I do enjoy Conyers, so let's go Conyers.
All right. That was 231.
I've got like 254 left, I think.
And we are on the board with our last pick, which is 253. Oh, Kevin failed.
By 1 pick. I'm so mad about that too, because I've been running the mock and I get to like 253 and I'm just like, what special teamer can I take at this point?
Exactly.
Mr. S does love Iowa tight ends too.
Yeah. I knew that was coming the second I saw him listed there.
Yep.
All right, last pick, boys.
What are the safeties? I wonder if we could find a punt gunner here. That's effectively what I'm looking at.
Let's just take Max and Hook just because the name's cool.
I think Ray on Lane is like an elite special teamer.
That was the direction my eyes kept going. Let's see if there's any right up here.
It doesn't mention the special teams work, but I think he's got like 700 special team snaps.
I mean, to me, if you're looking at a guy this late that's going to make the team, it's going to be for that reason. So.
Yeah, I think you're effectively drafting a guy to battle with Elijah Campbell for like a special team safety 4 role.
Brett?
I'm fine with that.
Cool. So I just closed that out. That our results are coming up now. The system gave us a B grade. When you guys look at this, first thoughts, any regrets, stuff like that, like things now that you see it, you would have probably done differently. What do you guys think?
I think I maybe would have taken a running back a little earlier than I think
That's
I would
the
have
only
taken one at
thing, yeah.
135 instead of 150. I thought we wouldn't have that big of a fall off in 15 picks.
This is the one thing. Like, I like CJ West, Robinson.
I
Maybe
think they're interchangeable.
they're interchangeable.
I could see Miami taking Ty Robinson because he's again like another one of those locker room guys, leader types. But by all accounts, like I haven't heard anything that CJ West isn't that. So I'm fine with like those are interchangeable to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only like real issue I have is like maybe I would have taken a wide receiver instead of Ty Hamilton, or taking the running back first and then see what the 5th round looks like. But
Yeah, that's the only thing. Is like once we lost out on Neil and Martinez, I'm just kind of like, okay, whatever. Running back. I think you look at that draft, and I think the first. I think you look at that, and you got the first 4 picks are all day one contributors, which you want, and I think they would definitely help us. I know a lot of people are saying we're in rebuild mode. It's more than likely, Kev, you and I talked about this, it's more retooling. But if you think this is rebuilding or retooling, this puts us right back into a very good spot if you get those 4 guys to start out with. Plus, if you look at some of the guys that we were high on from last year, day 3, like Malik Washington, Mo Kamara, Patrick McMorris, I think the team's higher on. That makes a big difference too. And Jalen Wright too, because he's a day 3 pick. But it's going to be interesting.
yeah, I think that like once you get past those top few running backs, it's kind of just like you're just taking a dude to take a dude. It feels like I don't know if any of those guys are like true impact, but I do sort of agree that like I think the idea this offseason is weeding out the bad apples and getting a little bit more competitive. I don't think it was anything along the lines of like completely rebuilding. I know that's what people are going to say, but I think Brett and we talked about this when Jordan was in Vegas, right? Like this team is going to be relying on what Tua is next year. And like if Tua gets hurt again, it doesn't matter who is playing corner for you. Doesn't matter who's playing safety for you. Like I think they're setting this up where like you're going to win or lose based off Tua, which is a fine position to be if you think Tua is an impactful quarterback.
Yep. Yeah. But it'll be interesting.
Tomorrow's the day.
Yep. Real quick before we leave, on the spot, which player that is not Will Johnson, because everybody's already expecting it, what one player do you expect to fall farther than people expect in round 1?
Ooh.
Farther than people think?
Ooh.
Yep.
Ooh. That is an interesting question.
I'm gonna say because it's gonna be consistent with the way I drafted. I'll say Amari Hampton goes a little bit later than people think he does.
It wouldn't shock me.
And I think that's because that middle tier of running back is so deep that you can get a number of those guys, which usually pushes them down a little bit.
I'll say this: if Jalen Walker does not go to the Panthers, he's going to fall outside of the top 20. But I think you can put him in pen with the Panthers. I will say the shoulder injury for Jahad Campbell knocks him into round 2.
I think that's a very possible situation that he falls out of round 2. The other one that I could see happening just with how the bottom of that board works, wouldn't shock me if one of those wide receivers in the Matthew Golden and Emeka Egbuka tier start to fall into round 2.
Yep.
I don't think it'll happen, but it would not shock me if we're looking later in the first round and like Matthew Golden's still on the board.
Yeah, I agree there.
I'll ask the flip side, and then we'll actually get out of here. A guy that you think tomorrow night when we come on here after the Dolphins pick, a guy that maybe goes a little bit earlier ahead of us than you thought he would.
Ooh.
Not ahead of us, but I think it is very possible Gray Zabel's a top 15 pick.
I was going to say Gray Zabel. It seems like that is really starting to move even further up the board. Wouldn't shock me if he's gone fairly quickly. If I had to take another name, Matthew Golden. To that same flip side, it would not shock me if Matthew Golden goes earlier than.
So because you did that, I could say Amari Hampton.
Go ahead.
I think Amari Hampton is going to go both lower than I thought and higher than I thought.
I just think
That's
that
what I
like
will
this
leave with.
this wide receiver position's so hard to predict because there's so many teams that could take a wide receiver, and it wouldn't shock me if one of them did, but also will probably not take a wide receiver. Like I look at like Miami, wouldn't shock me if they took a receiver, but I don't think they will. Like I'm fairly confident they won't. But like maybe Arizona takes Matthew Golden earlier than maybe it's expected, or maybe Dallas takes him. Would shock me if Dallas took a receiver at 12, and it's Matthew Golden.
Okay. Hey, and with that, like I said, the plan as of right now, unless one of us falls asleep or there's raging, the plan is to be on live right after the Dolphins pick, maybe a little early, because I think it would be fun to get a in-moment reaction to us.
I don't think you want in moment reaction from me, depending on how
Well,
the draft
look, I will
falls.
say that last year, I believe right after the first pick, we had Ghost on. I think Kevin, you were on here with us. We had a bunch of people on here, and that was some fun content being created.
Yeah.
So, guys, look for us to come on right after the Dolphins pick, or like Brett said a couple minutes before. I hope everybody has fun tomorrow night. It is, out of 365 days, it is one of my favorite of the year, and I know same for both of you. It has been fun talking about the lead up to this draft process, and an early congratulations to the couple hundred guys that hear their names called this weekend, because it is it's definitely a huge honor for them, and I'm happy for them and their families.
Last thing, I remember the Dallas Thomas pick and the Jerome Baker pick from you, Mr. S. It can definitely go worse. But
Brett, you want to sign us off?
Yep, on that, I am done giving Mr. S strays. Kev, as always, thank you for joining. Jordan, hope you're not jet lagged too much, and we will be back tomorrow. Definitely don't laugh at Bobby Schaus anymore for any of his predictions, because Bobby don't miss. But that's how we're signing off. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, gentlemen.